Quad66. I got a little update video here on these 1S batteries that I've been testing. So in the initial video, what I did is I flew all of them, kind of baselined them. I'm flying them on this quad. This is a little 1S quad built up with the FPV cycle board. And these are the Pyrodrone Hyperlight motors. These are 1103.5, 12,000 kV. A little bit bigger motor than most of the other stuff for the 1S, a little bit heavier. But they kind of carry their weight, so they work out pretty well because they control the prop pretty well, have a nice top end, and pretty decent. But these motors do seem able to draw quite a bit of current, and so it kind of brings us to the first update. The magic of LiPo. So some people really expound on the virtues of the standard chemistry LiPo, but at the end of the day, I've had two of these in a test. One was dead on arrival, and this one is now puffed. I don't know if you can see that, but this is past the point of where I'm comfortable charging it anymore. So this one's out of the test. I think the issue is 450 milliamps. It's just not enough. It can't deliver the current, and if the chemistry is in fact more durable, you can't make up for not having enough capacity, and those motors are just able to put these batteries under. The other update I have is I really hate XT30s, especially on these small batteries with thin wires and stuff. So these are, XT30 in general is just hard to grip, and they're kind of sticky when you pull them apart, plug it in. And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of stress on the wires, and you can see here, I just popped one off. I'm gonna go ahead and fix this because I want to test what happens with this battery, and I don't want to drop it from the test, so I'm gonna fix it. But what I've been doing is now, in terms of flying, one other notable update, new battery, the 720. And I'll talk about this one at the end, because I think it's maybe just a little bit different class of a battery. So what I've been doing is I've been flying one of these charged to the standard voltage, and then one of these charged to the high voltage. And the purpose of that is to see how much charging has an effect, both in terms of just flying and then also over time, how do they hold up. In terms of, I did a flight today, and I just kind of jotted down some notes on flight time. So with the 500 milliamp, this is the LiPo cell charged to the standard voltage. I got 3 minutes 23 seconds of kind of standard mixed flying, pretty aggressive flying, which is okay. That's sort of like the lower end of what I found tolerable enough for, or the lower end of what I find an acceptable kind of flight time, 323. It's good enough, but it's not great. Also charged to the standard voltage, LiPo voltage, was this cell. So this is a high volt cell, 600, and these basically, they have the same weight effectively. This 600 I got, even though it's charged to the regular voltage, I did get longer flight time, and it was closer to like 3 minutes 40 seconds, which once I'm getting up around 4 minutes, I'm pretty happy. I know I'm kind of splitting hairs there a little bit of around 20 seconds, but once I'm getting to 4 minutes, I'm pretty happy. Down around 3 minutes, I'm saying, that was a little bit short of a flight. The high volt cell, the 520, now this one charged to the high volt, I got similar flight time to that. So I got about 3 minutes 40 seconds, and pretty similar performance, charging 600 to standard voltage, charging 520 to high voltage, basically kind of the same flight time. And then still the champion right now is the 600 charged to the high voltage, and this one I got 410, which for me, I'm up above 4 minutes. It feels good. I like that flight time. The other thing that's interesting too is, I don't know whether it's just an effect of kind of the first impression of flight, but these two, when they're charged to the standard voltage, these just don't feel as good in the air as these. So these I charge to high voltage, these I charge to standard voltage. And I don't know if it's just kind of a first impression thing. Also, I'm not blinded to this, but this just feels like it's got a little bit more punch and zip. These charged to the standard voltage just don't feel like they have that same thing, even though they're basically kind of swapping out similar cells. And again, I don't know, is it just that first part where you're flying these and you're on higher voltage, that you kind of get that good first impression and that carries you through the flight, or is something else going on? I do bring up the or is something else going on because we've been doing some 10th scale RC car racing, and they're doing some nutty stuff with charging batteries. I'm not, because I don't want to destroy my batteries, but they're charging their batteries at like 5 to 10 C and for stock racing, and getting better performance out of it. And it's like this thing, and I'm like kind of skeptical, but then at the same time, the fast people are doing it, and I'm kind of a little bit inclined to maybe it's just the heat you put in the cell, but maybe something does happen differently when you kind of stress the cell a little bit when you charge it. The other thing that happens too with those cells is when you charge them multiple times in a sequence, the internal resistance comes down over the course of a race day, which has been documented, which is interesting. So I'm kind of wondering whether when you push these up to 4.35 versus not going to the high voltage, do you get a little bit lower internal resistance, or is something else going on besides just the voltage inside the cell? I don't know. You know, it's kind of a speculation thing. So then let's get to the new cell. Obviously this one's a little bit unfair comparison because it's brand new, but I think that's okay because it's just a different cell. This is sort of like, you know, those memes about my adult son. This is the adult son battery. This thing weighs in at 17.8 grams versus, you know, our 600 is 14.24. So what did I say? This was 17.8. Versus 14.2. So we're talking about a 3.5 gram difference. I was actually, I was sort of surprised when I weighed that and there was that much of a difference, because, but not really, because this cell in the air, it feels heavier. This quad, it sort of puts this quad a little bit over the edge where, you know, it's got the power there, but it feels heavy. And you can get into the throttle and stay in the throttle with this battery, but I don't think that this one justifies the weight, which is kind of another interesting thing to, I think, discuss about batteries and finding that right trade-off. So another thing that happens in stock racing and RC cars is in the stock class, what they do is they go to the bigger cell so that you get a higher voltage for the run, and partially because you're rolling and you're not flying, you might get an advantage that way, even though you're running a heavier battery, because you get a better voltage, so you get more power. Versus in mod racing, what they're doing is they go down to the tiny little batteries. And the reason for that is because the mod motors can just pull out so much amps out of anything that you can use a junk battery and the car's still fast. And so what they do is they go down to these smaller size batteries. Obviously, I'm just using this as a relative example, but they go down to smaller size batteries, so that way you have more room to play with your weight. You can change your weight distribution with weights in the car to get the handling the way you like it. And I think this applies somewhat to quads, with the caveats that because we're lifting these things up in the air, weight is such a factor that there's a sweet spot, but if you go past the sweet spot, the weight doesn't carry itself anymore, the extra, you know, current that you can get. Now, if you go too low and you just puff your battery and fry it, that doesn't work either. So you can't just go smaller to get the performance, because eventually you're just going to kill your battery. And it's just kind of interesting that right now, these are still the ones I'd recommend. I haven't been flying them day in, day out like I have at some points in the past, but you know, it's been a month, it's been more than a month, and I have a good amount of cycles on them, and these are, they're still outperforming the standard, you know, LiPo versus this high, you know, this high volt LiPo is still my go-to, and you know, they're still holding up better. This 600 versus the 500, 520, I still get more flight time out of that. So this battery, the one other thing I did with it, so when I flew it with mixed acro, I got almost 6 months. It's like 5 minutes, 50 seconds. And then I was just curious, I have 2 of them. So I flew another one, just kind of cruising. and pushed that out almost to 8 minutes, which is kind of interesting because cruising on this quad is actually pretty fast. This is for a 1S quad, it's pretty fast. Like if you want to get from point A to point B and do more of like a long range kind of thing, this might be a good battery for you because you can get, I think, very comfortably on cruising over 7 minutes of flight time. And so obviously this particular quad might not, well, maybe, I don't know how far that, I don't know, maybe, you know, this one, if you have a nice clear range, you can really take advantage of that, get out pretty far. But anyways, so to sum it up, standard chemistry is not enough to overcome, not enough capacity. Capacity only goes so far before the weight is too much. I'm still underwhelmed by these. If you have a different impression, so if you got these and you love them, let me know, because I'm not, it's possible that I just got not a great sell, and that's possible. So if you have a different experience and you're like, oh my gosh, these are awesome, you should really give them another shot, next time they become available, I'll order another one or something like that to kind of verify it. But so far, it's not really impressing me. So far, the go-to, other than flimsy wires, is the 600 high volt. All right, till next time, cheers.